They were told that power belonged only to men. They were told that crowns were created for kings, armies were commanded by warriors, and women were meant to stand behind those who ruled. But history remembers a different truth. Across centuries, women rose from palace shadows to control some of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. They faced betrayal from their own families, enemies who wanted them destroyed, and societies that believed they were incapable of leading. Yet they commanded armies, rewrote laws, defeated rivals, and changed the fate of millions. But behind their crowns were sacrifices, secrets, and decisions so powerful that the world still debates them today. For thousands of years, the story of civilization was told through the names of kings and emperors. Their victories were celebrated, their monuments were built, and their achievements became legends. But hidden behind those stories were women who fought battles that were never easy to win. They lived in worlds where a woman's ambition was considered dangerous, where a woman seeking power could become the target of enemies from every direction. They were not simply rulers sitting on golden thrones. They were survivors. They were strategists. They were women who understood that power came with a price. Some inherited kingdoms surrounded by enemies. Some entered royal courts with nothing but intelligence and determination. Some controlled empires without ever officially wearing the highest title. And some made choices that changed history forever. Their stories began in different lands and different centuries, but they shared one thing in common. They refused to be forgotten. In 7th century China, a young woman entered the imperial palace during the powerful Tang Dynasty. Her name was Wu Zetian, and no one could have imagined that she would one day break one of the strongest traditions in Chinese history. At the time, the idea of a woman ruling China was almost impossible. The throne belonged to men. The emperor was seen as the connection between heaven and earth. A woman could influence politics, but she was never expected to become the person who controlled the empire. Wu entered the palace as a young woman with limited power. She was surrounded by competition, jealousy, and political danger. The imperial court was not a peaceful world of luxury. It was a place where families fought for influence, where alliances changed quickly, and where one mistake could destroy a person forever. But Wu possessed something that made her different. She understood people. She understood ambition. She understood how power truly worked. Instead of accepting the role society had given her, she studied the world around her. She learned the weaknesses of her rivals and discovered how decisions were made inside the empire. Slowly, she climbed higher. She transformed herself from a minor figure inside the palace into one of the most influential people in China. Her rise created fear among powerful officials. They believed that a woman should never control the empire. They saw her ambition as a threat to centuries of tradition. But Wu refused to step aside. In 690 AD, she made a decision that shocked the world. She declared herself Emperor of China. Not the wife of an emperor, not someone ruling through a man. She became the emperor herself. She created the Zhou Dynasty and changed the structure of government. She promoted officials based on talent rather than only family background and strengthened the administration of the empire. Her legacy remains controversial. Some historians remember her as a brilliant reformer who helped China become stronger. Others remember the ruthless political steps she took to secure her authority. But history cannot deny what she achieved. Wu Zetian became the only woman in Chinese history to officially rule as emperor. She entered a world that said she could never belong, and she became the person standing above everyone else. Far away from China, another woman was fighting for the survival of one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. Her name was Cleopatra VII. Born in 69 BC, Cleopatra became the final active pharaoh of Egypt. But the real Cleopatra was far more complex than the legends that surrounded her. She was not only a symbol of beauty. She was a politician, a diplomat, a ruler fighting against an unstoppable enemy. When Cleopatra took power, Egypt was wealthy but vulnerable. Rome was expanding across the ancient world, and its leaders looked toward Egypt's riches with growing interest. Cleopatra understood that a direct war against Rome would be almost impossible to win. So she chose another battlefield: politics. She formed alliances with powerful Roman leaders, including Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. These relationships were not simply stories of romance. They were carefully calculated moves designed to protect Egypt's independence. For years, Cleopatra managed to keep Egypt standing between freedom and Roman domination. She negotiated with powerful leaders. She protected her kingdom. She fought for survival. But eventually, Rome became too powerful. The final struggle came against Octavian, the future founder of the Roman Empire. At the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra and Mark Antony suffered defeat. The fate of Egypt was decided. The civilization of the pharaohs, which had survived for thousands of years, was coming to an end. In 30 BC, Cleopatra's life came to an end, and with her passing, the age of the pharaohs was over. Egypt fell under Roman rule. But Cleopatra's name survived because she was never simply a defeated queen. She was the woman who stood against one of the greatest powers the world had ever known. Centuries later, another woman would rise from outsider to one of the most powerful rulers in Europe. Her name was Catherine the Great. Born in 1729 as a German princess, Catherine entered Russia as a young woman with almost no political power. She was a foreigner in a world where survival depended on intelligence, patience, and influence. She was not born Russian. She was not expected to become the ruler of a vast empire. But Catherine understood something important. Knowledge was power. She learned the Russian language. She studied politics. She built relationships inside the royal court and slowly transformed herself from an outsider into a force that could not be ignored. In 1762, after a political crisis involving her husband Peter III, Catherine took control of the Russian throne. Her rise was controversial, but her achievements changed Russia forever. She expanded the empire across enormous territories. She strengthened the military. She supported education, law, science, and the arts. Under her leadership, Russia became one of Europe's greatest powers. But every empire has enemies. Every ruler faces challenges. Catherine survived political threats, wars, and opposition for more than 3 decades. When she died in 1796, she left behind a Russia larger and stronger than the one she inherited. The foreign princess who arrived as an outsider became known to history as Catherine the Great. And her story proved that sometimes the greatest rulers are not those born closest to power, but those who have the courage to fight their way toward it.